Hi, it's Arsh Ellahi, and in today's video we're going to be talking about what happens when things go wrong in property. We're going to be giving you a few examples of things that's gone wrong in my property journey and how I overcame them. Before we do that, I need your help. Can you press the subscribe button and hit the notification bell? Every time I release a video, you get to know about it. So let's get straight into it. Anyone that says that they've had a smooth and plain sailing property experience generally would be lying to you. And I say that because in a lifespan of 21 years of being full-time involved in property, having owned hundreds of properties, having traded hundreds, if not thousands of properties, I've come across my fair share of issues. As well as that, I've developed quite a few hundred units, and again, that comes with its issues. So I'm going to try and break it down for you on almost like a scale basis. So if you're a first-time investor, or if you're a property investor full stop, and you've got a portfolio of buy-to-lets, things can go extremely well, providing that the properties are occupied, providing that the tenants are paying their rent, providing that the properties are being well maintained, providing that you've got a good letting agent and you've got good systems in place and a good power team in place. So when it's going well, everything, seems like it's easy. But however, there will be scenarios where property can test you. And when we're talking about this, let's just work on the basis of a tenant not paying rent. Now, if you've got a single let and that tenant is not paying rent, in essence, you're not generating any income from that property, which means that in actual fact, you're making a loss. You're having to subsidize the mortgage. The whole point of you investing is that you take a property out, the income from that property will then pay the outgoing of that property, which in essence would be the mortgage and any other outgoings like insurance, etc. However, if that income stream drops, or if that income stops, it's now coming out of your own pocket. So I've seen lots of scenarios where tenants have moved into a property and they've stopped paying rent. They've refused to pay rent with COVID and lockdown, everything that happened. We've seen rent arrears increase massively. So in that respect, what you do? First thing that I would suggest, as soon as you're aware that a tenant has stopped paying rent, you've got to kind of take some action. And the reason why I say take action, you've got to either go and meet the tenant, or you've got to have a conversation as to understand what's going on, the reason why they're not paying rent. Is it an issue with the property? Is it an issue with their circumstances? Is it an issue with their income? And kind of understand what it is. Because sometimes, with all due respect, sometimes that tenants get themselves in a bit of a financial pickle and they don't know how to dig themselves out of it. And what they end up doing is burying their head in the sand. But if you can be an understanding landlord and say, guys, okay, I understand that you're going through a tough time. There may be other ways around it. An example being in lockdown, lots of people got laid off, lots of people on furlough. They're not generating as much income as they were previously prior to lockdown. So what can they do? They can also get some government assistance. So I had a couple of tenants that said that they couldn't afford to pay the rent. And when I understood the root of the reason, and the root of the reason was that they couldn't afford it because of loss of income or drop in income, we got them to apply for universal credit. We actually assisted them with the whole process. So we sat down with them, we did the application with them, made sure that everything was in accordance. And believe it or not, with literally half an hour's worth of intervention, we actually managed to get their income level back up and get their rent paid to us direct from the government through universal credit. Now, that's just a small example. Now, not everyone's going to be in the same scenario. You've got some tenants that won't pay. And what I would consider these almost like professional tenants. When I say professional, that they move into property, they probably pay a couple of months and then they decide that they're not going to pay for the rest of the period, knowing that especially in lockdown that you can't issue notices, or you can't issue eviction notices, and you can't definitely get court days. I've known lots of landlords that are in debt or have not been paid any rent for the best part of 12 to 18 months. And in some scenarios, these properties are in places like London where the rent is quite significant, where it's £2,000 a month. Now, if you calculate what that looks like over a year, that is quite an amount as opposed to a room, let's say a room in a HMO in Wolverhampton where the rent is like £300 a month. So you've got to have a look at it from that point of view. So what do you do in that scenario? Again, it's about trying to communicate with the tenant, understand what their process is, or understand their reason. Now, yes, I would suggest that if a tenant is refusing to pay rent, that you take the necessary actions as quickly as possible. So, you serve the notices, if need be, you get solicitors on board, and you try and get a court date as quickly as possible. However, there may be other reasons, and I've come across lots of reasons as to why tenants don't want to pay. One of the reasons is that they actually want that notice. And they want that notice so that they can take it to the local authority and they can get housed in a council property. Lots of tenants want to do that, and the reason why they want to do that is because the council rent's a lot lower than the private rented sector. And I get lots of tenants that say, Arsh, can you give me a notice? Nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the property, but we actually want to go and live in a council property. As a result of living in a council property, they'll have a long-term low rent property, and then also they may also get the option to purchase on the buyback scheme that the council do many years later, providing that they've remained in the property. Now, that's one issue. So how do you deal with a tenant that's not paying? So again, you're going to have a chat with them. I very rarely go to court over a tenant that's not paying. I would rather buy them out the tenancy. And when I say buy them out the tenancy, I'll give them incentives to say, guys, okay, I appreciate that you're in debt. Well, I don't appreciate, but you're currently in debt to me of X amount of pounds. Now, if you leave today, or if you leave within a certain period, we'll scrap the debt, and I'll also even pay your deposit onto your next property. Now, why would I do that? The reason why I do that is because A, it gets them out my hair immediately. Second of all, it also, I don't know how long it's going to take for me to get them to court, especially with lockdown, COVID, and everything that was going on over the last 12, 24 months. Bear in mind that there's a backlog and everything that's going on. So let's just imagine that's another 6-month period. That's another 6 months that I'm not getting rent. Now, if the rent, let's just say an average of £500, that means that over 6 months, that's another £3,000 worth of debt, or another 6 months that I'm not actually generating any income from that property. So would it be better for me to actually take a hit by giving them £500 so that they can get out of my hair within the space of a week, and so that I can now get that property income and generating? Now, this is all done in accordance to guidelines. So you're not forcing them out. They're not leaving because I'm evicting them. They're leaving because of their own free will. And that's something that you've got to take into consideration. I get them to sign documents to confirm that they're leaving of their own free will. They're taking the funds back, and I'll even give their deposit back that we had held in a TDS, or tenancy deposit scheme. So these are little things that I'll do just to incentivize the tenant to say, guys, okay, you obviously don't want to live here, you're not paying rent for it, and if you decide that you want to, you can move immediately. I'll give you the funds, some funds, to get moving straight away. We've helped with moving costs. We've helped with tenant rent in advance for the next place. We've actually helped with deposits of the next place. And it's easier to get them out of our hair and put them in, make them someone else's issue, not ours. So that's that. In terms of other things that go wrong in property, we can talk about sourcing. We can talk about the conveyancing process, how deals always fall over because vendors change their minds, solicitors scupper the deal, solicitors scupper the deal because they're taking too long, or there are some questions that have kind of ruffled the feathers of the owners. Mortgage lenders can't work with that solicitor because they're not on their panel. These are all issues that you can come across, but believe it or not, in sourcing and the property transaction, these can also be resolved very quickly. And in actual fact, these can be resolved before they actually occur. So if you're in the property business, make sure that you choose a solicitor that is actually well versed in the strategy that you're looking to do. So for argument's sake, if you're looking to do a lease option, there's no point going to someone that only deals with buy-to-lets, because they're not going to understand the lease option. So therefore, the contracts that they create may not be valid for what you're looking to do. So you need to get lease option specialist solicitors. I actually did a video with a lease option specialist solicitor. If you flick through the channel, you'll see that I did it a couple of months ago, and definitely worth a watch. So in terms of choosing solicitors, make sure they're on the panel. Make sure they're on the panel from the outset. So understand who your broker is, understand who your lender is, and make sure that your solicitor has the sufficient credentials to meet that lender's requirements. As well as that, the same with brokers. Make sure that you've got the right broker that understands what you're looking to do with that property, how you're going to get in, how you're going to get out of the deal, and what lenders are in place, and make sure that they understand what they're doing. I had an example only this week where a property investor of ours is buying a property through the property investor app. That's not a plug, but it should be. Where the investor told the mortgage broker that they're buying a 4-bed HMO, but yet the mortgage broker put an application in for a 3-bed terrace property. Now, as a result of that, the valuers went out and valued and were expecting the 3-bed terrace property. They were not expecting a 4-bed HMO. As a result, they refused to value it. But yet now the investor is out of pocket by a valuation fee. Really simple stuff, but really frustrating because the simplest of things is not being picked up on. And this could be a fault from the investor, but it's definitely a fault from the mortgage broker. From a development point of view, where do we go with things that go wrong on developments? We can have issues with contractors, we can have issues with suppliers, we can have issues with materials, you name it. You know, there's so many things that can go wrong. You can have issues with the planning process, you can have issues with the council, the architects, the planners themselves, building regulations. If you're doing a property with grade 2 listed building, the heritage officers. You can see behind me some of the plans that I've got there, that I'm currently building 2 4-bedroom houses. And I'm quite fortunate because I'm actually self-funding these, which means that there's no funding in place. We already had the land. So we're just literally utilising, or what I would consider stress testing our portfolio. So anywhere during lockdown, I decided to have a look at how we can increase income from our portfolio, how we can stress test the portfolio. Is there ways that we could have converted single lets into multi-lets or convert them into flats? Could we add any extensions in any locations to add value? Were there any vacant pieces of land that we can build on? And this is one that we actually chose to do. We got planning for 2 4-bedroom houses, and we actually started work in November last year. As of recording, this is September 2021. So it's taken us a while, but it's not really bothered me. The reason being is that we've got no finance costs on it, and we've been getting the builder to drop on and drop off because we've had other projects. So for argument's sake, a tenant's moved out and the flats need a refurb, we'd rather get that income generating straight away. And as a result, these now are going to be in a position where they're going to be completed by, I think, mid-October 2021. And we're going to put these on the open market. We've had estate agents round. They're going to come out, they value them at circa around 300,000 per unit. So it's going to be a gross development value of around 600,000. Now, our build costs on this, all in all, we're going to be in roughly around 250,000 for both properties. That includes labour, materials, the full lot. So 250 grand. So there's a decent margin there. So that's what we're currently working on. But however, if I did have development finance in place, this project would have massively overrun, and as a result of that, we would have been paying finance, which in essence would have come off the bottom end. So in actual fact, that profit margin that you were looking like that, every month that you overrun, it starts to decrease. It starts to decrease, and then ultimately at some point it becomes unviable. The longer that the contractors are on site, the more it's costing you. You know, again, with lockdown and everything, and I seem to be mentioning lockdown a lot in this video, but materials have been pretty difficult to source, as well as that materials have also increased in price. And if you didn't factor these into your costings when you were building, or if you were being quite strict on your costings, again, these could have an implication on your bottom line, and your bottom line being your profit margin, what you're intending to walk away with from that project. So these are some of the issues that property investors come across when they're dealing with property. And again, I've tried to give you a wide spectrum of all the things that you can kind of consider as an issue. I could do a video pretty much on every single section. So the planning process, what can go right, what can go wrong, architects, what can go right, what can go wrong, development finance, what can go right, what can go wrong. And we could, in essence, spend a whole day doing that video. I've just done small snippets of it. If there is a specific segment that you want me to do, almost like a pros and cons on, I'm more than happy to do that. Drop it in the comments below, and I'll do it over the next couple of weeks. So there we have it, guys. Just a short, sharp video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. As always, I wish you all to be safe, well, and happy. If you want more free content, you can you can listen to my podcast, which I release every Tuesday at 6 a.m. It's called The Property Rebel. You'll find it on all podcast stores. So whether Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, that's just to name a few of them. As well as that, you can, as you know, my YouTube channel, please press subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can also connect with me on social media, so you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and Twitter under the handles of Arsh Ellahi. And finally, if you haven't already done so, go and download the Property Investor app. It's the UK's first property investment platform, which showcases all kinds of deals all over the UK, whether you're looking for below market value, rent to rent, lease options, service accommodation, commercial deals, we've got them all on there. All you have to do is go to our website, which is propertyinvestorapp.co.uk, or if you've got a smartphone, you can go to the App Store, type in Property Investor and download it from there. It takes 2 minutes to register and log in, and you'll see all the deals in the palm of your hand. So on that note, guys, I wish you all to be safe, well and happy, and I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thank you and bye-bye.